Alrighty, it's currently halfway through the year of 2025, and I'm here to give you the top UFC fighter aura losses of this year so far, at least. And I went through a little bit of variety here, okay? So you're going to see some unranked, you're going to see some ranked, alright? And the level of opponents and the level of the fighter does technically matter in this list, okay? But we're going purely based off general aura. And if you don't know what the aura is, you know, it's what people are talking about. Alright? So if you're coming up and people are like, yeah, this guy's a killer, da-da-da, and that's 99% of the narrative, because the UFC will promote any fucking narrative that suits their bill, as they kind of have to, in a way, if you think about it, because it is the corporation, but it is just like, they'll glaze any fighter, you know? They'll glaze, like, pressure time if they need to, alright? To convince the audience that they somehow won the fight. Regardless of that, though, this is going to be the general community, alright? YouTube MMA, mainly, alright? Is there a little bit of biases? Of course, okay? I like certain fighters over others. I was really high on some of these fighters. Hey, admittedly, hand on the Bible, okay? I was pretty high on some of these fighters, but generally, this is going to be like they should have won the fight, and they didn't win the fight. Or there was a community around them, a very large, outspoken community around them that felt like they should have won the fight. So with that being said, let's get into some honorable mentions here. I believe I've got 6 names that made the cut, and then I've got 2 honorable mentions just to give you some idea. So the person who was the first honorable mention, okay, or number 8 on my list here, I think if my math is correct, is Joaquin Buckley. Now, what I will say, we're halfway through the year. Buckley's a very active fighter. He does not have a win this year, okay? But that's another thing I'm taking into account this year alone, okay? So, you know, maybe the tail end of last year is being counted, but for the most part, I'm going to be counting this year. Buckley is on fraud watch, okay? Now, he didn't make the cut, alright? And there's many people that you could put in Buckley's position here. You know, you got the Felipe Lima shitting the bed, just looking like a fucking moron out there. You have the Johnny Walkers being stupid. You have the Armin Sarukians pulling out of fights, you know, like, there's a lot of, you have the Chandlers fucking losing all the time, you know, you have Oliveira getting a touch. There's a lot of people you could have put here, alright? My reasoning for putting Joaquin Buckley here is that he's 31, young guy, alright? So far, we've seen him flawless at welterweight before this fight this year. And he's murdering people, okay? He murdered Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, even though he was losing that fight. He did end up getting the finish. You know, Rusev is a good win currently right now. He's set to face Brian Battle. I don't think he can beat Brian Battle. The next middleweight goat, as he's moved to middleweight now. But good win nonetheless. Vicente Luque, another good win. A little bit scripted, if you ask me. But, you know, the Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, when he got the KO, sick. I think Wonderboy's only been KO'd one other time in his whole career, and that was to Pettis, and there might have been another one, but regardless, it was sick. Colby Covington, he whooped the shit out of Colby Covington. Masterclass performance. So this narrative of being a minus 250, 300 at the time, going into a Kamaru Usman, who's lost twice to Leon Edwards in Big 2025. Another person you could have put on this list. But he's lost twice to Leon Edwards, okay? 2 out of the 3 times they fought. And then he's also lost to Khamzat Chimaev, which we all know is going to get fucking fraud checked by DDP, alright? I ain't seen DDP get dropped by Gilbert Burns, alright? Just saying. Anyways, that's a topic for a different video. Kamaru Usman, 40 years old, cobblestone knees. I believe he's actually 38. Coming off a long layoff, 3 years, 3 fight losing streak, and he hasn't made, I think it was welterweight, in at least 2 years, okay? So this was like, this is his send-off, and Buckley shits the bed, alright? Did his striking look like it was absolutely phenomenal? Yes. His takedown defense, he got laid on for 4 minutes in 4 of the 5 rounds, and then in round 5, he just turns his brain off, or turns his brain on, and decides to fucking anti-grapple with the grappler. Oh, wow, you can see the most telegraphed double leg I've ever seen in my life, finally. It only took you 4 rounds, alright? So Buckley's on fraud watch. He did not make the cut of this list. I just wanted to mention him Because I'm watching you, Buckley, alright? Don't fucking shit the bed again, okay? I want violence, I want sick fighters, I want fucking do the Tyson! You know, I want some fucking entertainment in my fights. So Buckley's on Fraud Watch. He didn't make the list. He didn't lose the most aura, but he's up there, okay? You know, especially on my Fraud Watch list. But to some people, I would think that they would think Buckley's lost all his aura because he just lost to a 40-year-old man in Big 2025 who's on a 3-loss streak. Not a good look, all right? But moving on to the other honorable mention, and this is more or less he's disqualified because there's not really any good reasons to say he's got minus aura. Like, he hasn't lost recently, per se, and he is on, like, a win this year. It's Islam Makhachev, all right? Listen, okay? This guy was being touted as, you know, the guy, you know, Ilya doesn't want to fight because he's just bigger than Ilia Topuria. He beats Ilia Topuria, no problem. You know, he could go up to welterweight, and when he fights Bilal, he's going to whoop his ass. Well, guys, JDM, all right, beat the living shit out of Bilal Muhammad. In my opinion, it was a close 3-2, but to the general public's opinion, it is pretty much unanimous that JDM brought violence back and whooped the shit out of Bilal. And based on that performance, we're looking at a interesting situation for Islam Makhachev. Does he beat JDM? This is the question. You know, JDM's a really good striker, showcased really good grappling and takedown abilities, or takedown defense abilities in his last fight against Bilal Muhammad. Now, obviously, Islam is better than Bilal. However, it is like, this is a little interesting. He doesn't just go in there, Islam by round 1, whatever the fuck he wants. All right? And his only win this year is Renato Moicano in January. People forget, man. He did fight in January, okay? And everyone on this list will have a fight this year, okay? But his win over Renato Moicano, he got dropped, guys, okay? Off balance, of course, you know, that's what we tell the UFC judges, okay? But in my book, he got the knockdown. And then he submitted Renato Moicano. That is aged like milk. Renato looked like dog shit in his last fight. And that was a 24-hour short notice fight for Renato Moicano, who took it, got $1 million for the short notice. All right, just had to be said. Okay, yeah, and now he's getting older. You know, 33. We're getting close to that 35 cutoff point. Okay, where athletes typically take a down spiral. Okay, and his wins are on featherweights. So regardless, if you know, Islam moves up and beats JDM right now, still a good argument he's ducking Ilia Topuria. I'm just saying, all right? Islam Makhachev could never knock out Charles Dubronx in round 1. So it's just a little, we're in a little bit of an interesting situation. I wouldn't say aura loss, but his aura is definitely not increasing. I'll say that much with Islam Makhachev so far this year. So he's an honorable mention. He didn't make it to the cut. We're now 8 minutes into recording this video. I haven't even talked about number 1 or my first 6. Let's move on to number 6. The 6th most aura loss, in my personal opinion, of the year for UFC fighters is Peyton Talbot, all right? And the reason why is I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh, but he's unranked. Oh, but he was just fighting Hani Barcelos. Hani Barcelos just beat Cody Garbrandt. I get that in a very close 2-1 decision. I get that. However, Peyton Talbot looked like shit in that Hani Barcelos fight. He was minus 800 to 1,000, I think, before closing odds. And it was just like, I think closing odds, he was like minus 1,200, some ridiculous fucking minus over 1,000, okay, in this Hani Barcelos fight. I could be a little off there, but that's what it felt like. And everyone thinks this, like, there was a lot of people talking about how Peyton Talbot's the next fucking, next Sean O'Malley, or the Sean O'Malley we needed. Yeah, we found out this guy can't defend Hani Barcelos takedowns. What the fuck do you think Merab's gonna do to him, alright? So, yeah, a little bit of a fraud checking. And then, well, yes, he did win in 2025. He's also lost in 2025. People forget, man, that Hani Barcelos fraud checking was this year. That's pretty fucking important, you know? So, yeah, recently in the past 7 months as of recording this video, he got fraud checked by Hani Barcelos, and he beat Felipe Lima in a fight where Lima threw away the fight. And what I mean by that is Lima purposely went to bottom position in grappling positions, looked like shit, And all, like, he was winning, and then he decided to fucking pull guard, go on bottom, like a jiu-jitsu nerd. Very brain-dead IQ from Felipe Lima. And the reason why, another reason why Peyton Talbot's so high up here, even though his last fight was close to a pick'em. Actually, no, I think he was a pretty sizable underdog. The reason why he's here is because there's still a dedicated community, the Frank Ocean fan base, if you will, that are genuinely saying, like, Peyton Talbot's, like, the next big thing at 135. Listen, he beat Felipe Lima, another unranked bum, okay? Felipe Lima is a little bit better than a bum, but he's a bum in my book until we see a better performance. And as of right now, I can't see Peyton Talbot beating fucking anyone that big. You know, I think Malcolm Wellmaker beats him. And, you know, Giannis Gamori, Cameron Simon, I'll say it, they're cans. You know? Sorry to MMA Guru and his fucking boy Cameron Simon. They're cans. Alright? So he crushed the cans, and then he got crushed like a can. This was the next big thing at bantamweight, okay? So that's kind of why he's here. He's a young prospect. You know, fuck, man. It's rough. Sean O'Malley didn't get fraud checked till Chito Vera. At least a ranked opponent, you know? Honey Barcelos. He will forever be amongst the unranks, okay? I think at some point he was ranked during the last couple of years, but it's still like, brother, come on, clean it up. It's Honey fucking Barcelos, all right? 40-year-old man, get it done. Anyways, that's my pick. Moving on. And this one hurts. Jamal Hill. All right, brother. A lot of things have come out with Jamal Hill. He said that he wasn't training as much as he'd like. Basically, I'm taking that as he didn't fucking train at all, okay? After his Achilles tear, especially from the way he looks, and that ego is crazy. Being down 4 rounds and getting knocked down within 2 of those rounds against Khalil Roundtree, and then still, whenever he fucking dodges a head kick, he's like, no, no, no. Come on, brother. Come on. Come on. From former champ to losing to Khalil Roundtree, which in my head, I'll be honest with you, I think Khalil Roundtree is barely ranked light heavyweight. Or, I question if he beats Alonzo Metafield. I don't give a fuck what people say about Khalil Roundtree. The guy still sucks. He has shit cardio. And you might say, well, he just went to a 5-round decision. A 5-round decision where there were single-digit significant strikes landed in every round. That's not a pace. That's not a 5-round pace, okay? When I'm talking about a 5-round decision, I'm talking like a fucking... Even Pereira Ankalaev was a much higher pace than that. You know, which, you know, some honorable mentions as well. Alex Pereira, what the fuck, bro? But if we take a look here at light heavyweight, I don't know if Khalil beats a Zhang Mingyang, you know? I don't know if he beats a Bogdan Guskov. Fuck, Johnny Walker's got a win over him within the past couple of years. Okay, so Jamal Hill losing to a guy who lost to Johnny Walker in and itself is a loss. But this guy is a former champion, man. I get it. He beat an old Glover Teixeira to get it. But his wins were still impressive. You know, he chinned Johnny Walker in a very impressive way. He beat the fuck out of Thiago Santos in a very impressive way for the time. You know, he beat Glover Teixeira in a very impressive way. And those were only 2 years ago. You know, a little over 2 years at this point. But... it is just like, man, the 3-year, like, difference is crazy. Yuri Prohaska, I get it, alright? Yuri Prohaska's a fucking savage. A lot of people were pretty high on Jamal to beat Yuri because everyone thought Yuri was washed. Goes out there, and Jamal Hill shits the bed. And then it's like, okay, Khalil Roundtree's up next. Jamal's a former champion. Khalil just got his ass whooped by another former champion. Come on, Jamal, show levels. And he goes out there, loses a 5-round decision, looks shocked like, wow, I lost 5 rounds? Yeah, bro, you did lose 5 rounds. Again, fire your whole fucking team. Whatever teammates said it was close, because I saw the tapes, okay? Whatever teammates were telling you it was close, it was not fucking close, okay? You arguably got 1 round, if that. As a Jamal Hill glazer. So, as a Jamal Hill fan, I can comfortably say Jamal Hill has lost all aura. Now, you might say, oh, overrated champion, that's why Pereira caught him and beat the shit out of him in round 1. Fair enough. He still had fans in the Yuri Prohaska fight. Lost a year to Asuka. That's okay. You know, we just found out who the fraudulent champion was. You know, the fraudulent former champion was. And it was Jamal Hill. That's okay. Alright? But he can still beat the unranked bums. He can still beat the lower echelon of the division, you know? He's going full Jamal heel on their ass. And now we found out, I don't know if this guy beats Bogdan Guskov, you know? I don't know if he beats Alonzo Metafield at this point in his career, and I genuinely mean that. And that sucks, man. From former champ, literally got the belt, lost to two great fucking light heavyweights, and now it's like, I don't know if he's ever going to win again. His next loss, he's definitely getting cut. It's just his aura is completely gone. He's got no aura at all. At least in the Khalil Roundtree one, he lost to two former champs. It is what it is. Technically three if you want to include Paul Craig. We all know he's the true light heavyweight champ, and John Jones was fucking terrified of Paul Craig. He's lucky he got away before Paul Craig got to the top level. But it is a little sad, man. Because it is just like, outside of Jamal Hill, looking at someone who's a former champion who had a very impressive performance at like getting the belt, and now it's like, wow, he gets caught in round one by Pereira. And by caught, it is a little bit of cope, but it is also like the, you know, he did, like, Pereira landed one punch and it fucking slept Jamal. And then the Yuri fight, he went to war. He was doing well, but he also was open on the feet, like 100% of that fight. And then the Khalil Roundtree fight, it literally looked like that was a different human being. So, very rough, very sad to see. You know, a former champion just shit the bed in his next three performances, but it is what it is. He's got no aura, you know? I'm not gonna be picking him in his next fight. I don't give... It'd have to be a debut or an unranked bum in light heavyweight, you know? For me to pick him. Like, if he's fighting fucking Vitor Petrino or like a Junior Tafa off a win, maybe I'll pick him. But outside of that, I don't think I could pick Jamal Hill to win his next fight. So that's why he's here. He went from like, okay, he might fight top echelon to he fights fucking nobody. He's getting smoked by everyone, in my personal opinion. So we move on to the next one. Up on this list, number 4, counting down from 6. And that would be Israel Adesanya, the doggy diddler himself. Now, why is he here? Well, yes, he lost to Alex Pereira, got the belt back in a fluky KO way. Yes, I did predict Sean Strickland to dog walk the doggy diddler for 5 rounds and having an early knockdown. You can quote me on that. I have IRL evidence that I can get on recording if you question it. Okay? But that was my pick, Sean Strickland by decision. Alright, sneaky underdog pick by me. So if you want picks and predictions, feel free to hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, because I always do predictions for every single fight card. Now, with that being said, shameless plug over. His loss to Dricus du Plessis, he had moments where it was successful, okay? And there's moments there where it's like, okay, if Israel Adesanya wants to fight top-level opponents, he probably does beat the top-level opponents. You know, Marvin Vettori, probably Roman Dolidze, Jared Cannonier, so like top, what, 5, top 7, something like that? You know, in middleweight, yeah, he's number 7, literally. I fucking was peak on that. So it's like, you know, Robert Whittaker's number 5. He probably still beats Robert Whittaker, unfortunately for Whittaker. But it was just like, he probably does beat a large portion of the top ranks after the DDP, yeah, the DDP fight. But the problem is now, he just got slept by Imavov in round 2. And I'm going to be honest, round 1 was not looking good for Israel Adesanya. He had moments, but as we're finding out, he has moments, and then he gets slept. He doesn't have the power on the feet to finish anyone at 35 years old. All right, this is where we're talking about the skid. Okay, you know, when you get to that 35 cutoff. But he just turned 35 as well. God damn. Actually, no, he's turning 36. God damn. What an unk. But yeah, people are like crying it's an end of an era, so that's another reason. Even the D1 Adesanya Glazers are hopping off the Adesanya train. Now, that is a hard thing to do. Now, if you've been around MMA for a while, 2-3 years plus, maybe even a year at this point, The Adesanya Glazers are like a cult of doggy diddling, anime profile picture fucking... You know the types, alright? You know what I'm trying to say, okay? But we all know that the Adesanya Glaze was insane. Best welterweight of... or best middleweight of all time. Calm down, little bro, okay? Hey, GSP's there. Hey, Anderson Silva, okay? Still had more title defenses, okay? And... they would defend him by saying, like, 3-time world champ. That's not a flex, little bro. Okay, that means you lost the belt 3 times. Okay, so it's just... or I guess that'd be 2 times because he lost to Pereira, and then he lost to Strickland. And then he got an unjustified rematch. But they justified it because he was one of the best. No. Okay, he just wasn't. And, you know, when Imavov got slept, that's just justice, alright? So that's what happens when you glaze a fighter too much. And that's what happens when they have a cult of just absolute D-riders, okay? And D1 Glazers, if you will. And now he's got no aura. I don't think he beats Fluffy Hernandez. Listen, I picked Israel Adesanya against Imavov because I was thinking Israel Adesanya is good, and he is technical enough to beat the shit middleweights. I thought Imavov was a shit middleweight. Turns out, I think he's still a shit middleweight, but he's just got power, and Adesanya doesn't have a chin anymore. And when I say he got KO'd, he got flatlined. I'm talking, that was a corpse for a few seconds there, you know? Arguably worse than the Pereira one, too. The way, Izzy got, like, standing TKO'd. You know, we were robbed of a flat-out cold, but it is what it is. Regardless, though, he got knocked down by Strickland in round 1. He got knocked down by Dricus du Plessis. Dricus du Plessis fucking manhandled him on the ground, made him look like an absolute child. Imavov beat the living shit out of him. I know we're just going by this year, but it's like, this Imavov win is very telling. Bro, Imavov is not a high-level... like, Sean Strickland beat his ass on short notice. I get it, it was like 2 years ago, but that's only 2 years ago. You know? 2 years ago, he's fighting with Pereira. You know what I mean? And now we're looking at Fluffy Hernandez being able to beat his ass. You know, we're looking at yeah. You know? He could beat Kopylov. Like, maybe. But even then, it's just like, you know, a boost could give him problems, to be fair. You know? Reiner de Ritter probably ragdolls him. You know what I mean? Like, fucking hell. It'd be a very big shock to me if Adesanya is a favorite in any one of his fights. And that's another thing about all these picks. I wouldn't be shocked if Peyton Talbot's necessarily a favorite in his next fight, if it's a bum. But any higher level opponent, I'd be shocked if Peyton Talbot's the favorite, like he was in the Honey Barcelos fight. Jamal Hill was another guy where it's like, he's going to be an underdog in every single fight. Israel Adesanya is going to be an underdog in any fight you put him in there with, you know? Unless it's somebody he's already beat. And, you know, people are saying, like, give him the Strickland fight. Bro, he's just going to get dog walked for 5 rounds again. Like, Strickland's not washed just because he's coming off a loss. Because he had staph infection. You know? He was a minus, like, 1,500 in the closing, in the final round. Before round 5 even started. He was minus 1,500 against Paulo Costa. Like, people act like that fight was close. If it was close, he wouldn't be fucking almost minus 2,000. Okay? So, a little bit of a cope from the anti-Strickland fans. But yeah, the Israel Adesanya glaze, it's over. The era's over. And the cult is now, even the biggest glazers, even Kenny Okoye, okay? That's how deep we're going. Will probably have a hard time picking Israel to win his next fight. I'm sure you'll find some reason to cope with it, though. Moving on to number 3. And now this is where it gets, like, these are the big boys, okay? And people forget, man, but Carlos Prates, he was one of the 4 horsemen of the Fighting Nerds, even though the Fighting Nerds have a lot of fighters in the UFC now. Listen, great UFC career. He was on a crazy win streak, alright? Beat Charles Radke, a little bit of a victim in there, Charles Radke was. Beat Trevin Giles, a little bit of a victim, Trevin Giles was. He was just asking to get KO'd. He beat the Leech, who's never been KO'd before, so that's a nice little stamp to put on the record. And he smoked Neil Magny in round 1, which rarely happens with Neil Magny at the time, okay? And this is where it gets interesting, because while, yes, he gains a little bit of aura, and this is why he's not number 1, he gains a little bit of aura, because he made Ian Gary look like the cuck he was in round 5, but he did showcase if there's not a victim in front of him, he will be the victim in the fight, where he will just wait. He will just plot around. He doesn't really cut space that well. His striking is just one punch, wait, counter, miss. Okay, well, I'm down in this round. Oh well, you know. So it is just like when there's a victim in front of him who will let Carlos Prates grab his wrist like Radke did for that knee. Wicked KOs, wicked finishes, okay? But this is like the first crack in the Fourth Horseman, and Carlos Prates losing that fight was like, brother, how did you fumble it in round 5, you know? That's the number one. Number 2, it was short notice, Ian Gary. And well, yes, I did pick Ian Gary, so feel free to hit my picks and predictions every single week on every single fight card. But I did pick Ian Gary reluctantly, okay? I didn't want to, but I had to get the pick right. And Ian Gary did win because he's just slightly higher level than Carlos Prates. And while Ian Gary is ranked pretty highly in welterweight at the moment, it is just like, damn, he's no longer on a fighting win streak as a fighting nerd, you know? Like, Gene Silva coming off a loss is going to be rough to see, you know? Mauricio Huffy, without the win streak and without the fighting nerds right now, he looks like a Trevor Peak, you know what I mean? Where it's like, it's entertaining, but it's like, not really that good, you know? And just because they do flashy moves doesn't really mean like they're fucking top level, okay? Mortal Kombat sweep or that spinning wheel kick he did on Bobby Green, that's sick, right? But it is just like, when they're coming off a loss where they do nothing for 4 rounds and then in the 5th round fumble the bag, it is just like, yeesh. That's a tough look for me. Carlos Prates, I did think was genuinely like the most dangerous of the fighting nerds during the start of this year. So this is a little bit biased for me as well. I now think he is the worst of the four horsemen, you know, and a lot of the fighting nerds are now on Fraud Watch, you know, the Kyle Bahadios, okay? The fucking Mauricio Huffys, the Gene Silvas, you know? A lot of them are now on Fraud Watch, all right? How many times are they going to try to get a highlight before they can't get a highlight on the high-level opponents they're facing? So that's why Carlos Prates is my number 3. He gets the bronze medal for the most oral losses. And I'll be honest with you, even in interviews and shit, bro, this kid had aura. Let me tell you, this kid had aura. He said after, I think, his Neil Magny fight, in a sweater, hands in pocket, he was asked, like, oh, where would you like to fight next? He's like, yeah, I'd like to fight in Australia. Where my baby mom is at. I'd like to visit my daughter there. With his grin, all clean white teeth and shit, bro. That was, goddamn, he impregnated a lot of women that night, okay? Including me. No, okay, I'm not gonna go that far. But it is just like, it's sad to see the aura go away so quick from a man so strong. You know, Nightmare, also, badass name. Little bit of Sean Woodson energy now that he's lost. You know, he might have hatched from one of the eggs. We'll have to find out. You know, tune in to the next Alien Romulus Part 2. Moving on. The second place, silver medal, okay? And this guy, you know, let me tell you, all right? He does like his gold medals, but he gets a silver one for aura loss this year. Henry fucking Cejudo. You probably forgot this guy even competes still, okay? I can't see, man. I'm seeing triple, man. I'm seeing triple C, man. I can't see, man. Yeah, that's a rough one for Henry Cejudo. Henry Cejudo's coming off a 3-fight losing streak, similar to Kamaru Usman, but Kamaru Usman's at least on a win streak, okay? He did lose this year in February to Song Yadong. Now, there was a fan base, and I did pick Song Yadong against Henry Cejudo. There is a fan base, and there was a fan base, the wrestling fan base mainly, but there was a fan base that was thinking Henry Cejudo can still make a name for himself as a bantamweight, maybe not go best athlete of all time, anything like that, but he could make a name for himself if he picks up a few W's here and there, you know? Get a nice win over Chito Vera, get a nice win over, you know, maybe a young up-and-comer, prove that you still got it. I get it, he's 38, and it's like, you know, he's aged like milk over time. The Aljo fight was really fucking close, okay? I'm saying it right now, I thought Henry Cejudo genuinely won that fight, okay? I do think the scorecards were pre-written, and I think that split decision is, like, very rough for Henry Cejudo, and I feel really bad for him, because we could be living in a completely different timeline right now. But losing to Aljamain and Merab in the past 2 years, it's rough, but those are two of the best 135ers of all time, arguably, right? Merab's definitely up there. Aljamain's second, if not first, right? If we're talking like pure championship status, but I think we can all agree at this point Merab surpassed Aljamain. But Song Yadong is good, but he struggles at beating top-level dudes. He can't get past Corey Sandhagen. He can't get past Peter Young. He can't get past... there's another name in there. But Song Yadong is good, but he showcased that, like, the championship-level fighters are going to beat him. You know? Peter Yan. You know? But the problem is this was, like, Henry Cejudo's most edible match in looking for a top 5 fight, you know? Chito Vera maybe, but I think we all agree Chito Vera barely deserves to be fucking ranked. And if he's ranked, he's like bottom 15, trying to fight for a stop at bottom 15, you know? But if we're looking at bantamweight, you know, like, we're looking at like Eamon Zahabi, Jose Aldo, like, these guys, I do genuinely think, at the time, would have given Henry Cejudo a problem. Rob Font, even, you know, I don't mind Rob Font's chances, but these guys are, like, mainly out of it. When we're talking, like, top contenders, we're talking Corey Sandhagen, Peter Yan, Umar Nurmagomedov, Sean O'Malley, and purely based off of people he hasn't fought, Davison Figueiredo. Out of those top 5, roughly around when Homeboy lost, Henry Cejudo, when he lost, those were the top 5. Song Yadong was, like, looking for a top 5 matchup, and this was, like, the most... Like, if you're gonna showcase you're good at wrestling, do it in this fight. You know? Song Yadong isn't a great grappler. You know? And it would have been different if this was a 5-round fight, and it was, like, a... Okay, Song Yadong and, you know, Henry Cejudo, they made it fairly competitive. It was slightly competitive in terms of both men were landing shots, but Song Yadong was very clearly up in every single round, whooping Henry Cejudo's ass, making him look like Unk out there. And that's coming from a Henry Cejudo that was coming off a loss where he went 1-2 against Merab Dvalishvili, the current bantamweight GOAT. He got a round on Merab, wasn't able to do that on Song Yadong. And I know it's like, that's not an indication that Song Yadong's better than Merab or anything, but like, you expect a little bit more, you know, from Henry Cejudo and what he was doing. And then he gets eye poked, and I get it, eye pokes suck. It was a little bit on purpose, but in my opinion, it was like Henry really ducked into that eye, or the fingers of Song Yadong. And when he got eye poked, he sat there on his ass for 5 minutes, like, I can't see, man. Literally, I mean this genuinely, 5 minutes. And it looked like he was seeing fine. Like, it looked like he was seeing fine. Everything was fine. You know, he's chilling. You know, he was really trying to advocate for a point deduction, but that wasn't happening. Everything was fine. I get it after the fact. It's a retinal, whatever, fucking damage. I get it, right? But you're in a fight. This is your, like, if you beat him, you can fight for #1 contender, right? This is if you beat Song Yadong, you can then fight a Peter Yan. You can then fight an Umar. You can then fight a Corey for a #1 contenders match. Sean O'Malley off a loss. But what we saw is just an old Unk who doesn't want to fight, you know? And this went from thinking like, okay, Henry Cejudo's lost to some of the best bantamweights of all time. But, you know, if he can get some wins, it's not like that bad. Now it's pretty fucking bad. Now he's tarnished his whole legacy. Now it's not even the fucking wrestlers can glaze this guy. Because he doesn't wrestle that well. Even in fucking UFC, you know? Aljo, he didn't really kind of out-grappled him. Got, I think, more takedowns. Merab got more takedowns for sure. And, like, Song Yadong's whooping him on the feet. So, if he can't contend with Song Yadong on the feet, and he can't contend with Merab or Aljo at 135 with the wrestling, what the fuck can he do? You know? It's rough. And he didn't shoot takedowns on Song Yadong. So, it's just like, brother, I can't trust you to shoot takedowns in any other match. I question if he beats a Rob Font now. I question if he beats Kyler Phillips. You know? And it's like, he did have a chance to be a bigger name. Like, he did have a chance to be in the talks for #1 contender. Oh, he can actually get the belt. You know, there's talks. Now that's completely out of the picture. So in my opinion, Henry Cejudo losing the way he did to Song Yadong, very specifically because he quit in those, you know, eye poke situations. I get it. It's an eye poke, but it's still like, brother, like, fucking, you're a fighter. It's your job to go in there. You get eye poked. You're seeing double, man. That's not Song's problem. That's your problem, okay? Don't get fucking eye poked, okay? So, also, I believe the eye poke happened. And I want to say they continued on even after the eye poke. Because if I remember correctly, they continued on after the eye poke. And Song Yadong was literally like, fingers in his face still, aura farming the eye poke threat, okay? And then by the end of the round, he's like in his corner, telling his corner, I can't see, I can't fucking see, I can't see. You're a fighter, you know? So, to me, he's lost all fighting spirit. He's lost his will to compete. I don't see this guy ever making a run at all points because he's 38 years old. That's rough, you know? So, Henry Cejudo, big aura loss for me. Moving on, we have the number one biggest aura loss of the whole year, in my personal opinion. I can't think of anyone who could lose more aura other than Ilya Topuria losing to like an unranked lightweight or something. It is Bo Penny, okay? Bo Nickel got fraud checked by Reiner de Ritter. Oh, man, that was rough to see. It's not just the fact that he lost to Reiner de Ritter. Reiner de Ritter, some people are like, oh, he's a former champ from another promotion. As a UFC fan, I mean this genuinely, it doesn't fucking matter if you are a champion from another promotion. It's how you do in the UFC. That's it, okay? And yes, Reiner de Ritter did have an amazing performance against Bo Nickel. Do you want to know what his other performances were? Fighting Kevin Holland in a Kevin Holland quit fest, and then fighting Gerald Meerschaert, where Gerald Meerschaert wobbled fucking Reiner de Ritter and made Reiner de Ritter look like he was a fucking child on the feet. And I mean that literally, okay? He's the only reason why I picked Kevin Holland to beat Reiner de Ritter in the first place, purely because of how bad Reiner de Ritter's striking really is, you know? And in this fight, he showcased great striking. I think it's more on level with how shit Bo Nickel really is. This guy was a crazy favorite. And I think he was minus 500 to 700 in this Reiner de Ritter fight. The Paul Craig fight, he was like minus 800 plus. The Cody Brundage fight, he was like minus 1,000 plus. All right, Valentin Woodburn, I think he was the highest favorite the UFC's ever seen. That record has since been broken. But these fights, he was a crazy fucking favorite, okay? Now, the problem was that he went from the beginning of this year, world killer, okay? Could compete with Khamzat Chimaev. And yes, there were people that, you know, were on the Reiner de Ritter side, but I'm saying, like, bro, 90% of people's picks and everything were on Bo Nickel. That's why he was a heavy favorite. 90% of the narrative around Bo Nickel, how does he do against Khamzat? How does he do against Dricus du Plessis? Then he goes out there, gets absolutely dog-walked by one of the worst strikers I think middleweight has ever seen. Middleweight has ever seen. That is impressive to be shit at middleweight in terms of striking. Reiner de Ritter masterclassed him, not only in the striking, took him down, all right, and made Bo Nickel look like a pussy on the ground. A straight-up pussy. And on top of all of this, to make matters worse for Bo Penny, not only gets fraud checked by Reiner de Ritter and one of the biggest, like, wow, that fighter will never be anything performances ever. Okay, I get it, he's young, but 29, all right? He's got 4 years to make it to the top. If he doesn't, he's cooked, right? And this guy only fights once a year, so I don't think he's getting a title shot within 3 fights, all right? But Bo Nickel, that was a number 12 in the ranking spots, okay? Number 12. Where the fuck is middleweight? Number 12. I think at the time he was even lower. I want to say maybe 14. But this was his ranking opportunity. And I know Reiner de Ritter might go on to fucking slaughter Robert Whittaker. But this is like, brother, what the fuck? You have like 300 wrestling matches or some shit like that. Everyone's touting you as the next big thing. You know, talking about how much you're improving, why you're taking so much time off to improve. And it looks like he's never faced adversity once in his life in that fight. On top of that, he copes on his podcast, the Nickels and Dimes, whatever the fuck his podcast is, and he had such a big cope fest in his podcast that the podcast, hours after the video being posted, removed it to upload an edited version where he doesn't cope as much, and he's literally sitting there just like, you guys can suck my balls, I'm still on the top level of the UFC, man, nothing was going my way in there, man, and I felt that from round one, and his fucking pussy boys, alright, sitting next to him, are reading Instagram quotes by fucking AI Bigfoot, for fuck's sake, alright? Just yapping about, it ain't about how hard you hit, it's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward, and this was your first test, Bo, and, some of the greatest fighters of all time, man, they've had losses, right? But this wasn't what that was. This was, he quit. He straight up quit. This wasn't like he got knocked out. It is what it is. Sometimes your chin is just what it is. This is, he got fucked up in round one. He lost round one very clearly. We go into round two, and he's up against the fence, and it looks like he's never been in a clinch before in a day in his life. Reiner de Ritter, knees to the body, fucking hammer fists up top, like doing everything he wants, and then a fucking flying knee right to the body, puts down Bo Nickel. He quits via liver shot, alright? And as we all know, high-level fighters don't get finished by liver shots. Even Merab showed that, okay? So, in my personal opinion, I don't think anyone can lose as much aura as Bo Nickel has. I'll be honest, I thought Paul Craig beat Bo Nickel, and you can go back and watch all my videos, and every single video after the Paul Craig fight, I have said I've thought Paul Craig beat Bo Nickel, stand-up only, and, he did lose the third round, but I thought he won the first and second, but Bo Nickel fucking sucks. I don't know if he's ever gonna get ranked at this point, Does he beat a Boos? Does he beat a fucking Bruno Ferreira? Does he beat Marvin Vettori? Like, these are the questions we have to ask now because of how shit that performance was. So he's lost all aura. The wrestling fucking dick riders are even hopping off the Bo Nickel train, okay? Michael fucking Bisping and all those commentary people are still hands and knees trying to give Bo Nickel the Glock, hoping to get an interview and shit. But we all know, as a fan base, MMA YouTube side, Bo Nickel's a pussy. He got fucked up. He's coping more, I was going to say more than Pirate Software, but I think Pirate Software has one of the biggest egos. But Bo Nickel's up there, man, okay? So if you don't know the Pirate Software drama, hey, I just opened a can of worms for you, alright? Feel free to enjoy that slot. Anyways, yeah, Bo Nickel's a fucking fraud. We all know he's a fraud now. And we can move on with our lives knowing that he's a fraud. But it's the fact that he got fraud checked in big 2025 that I'm putting him here. Number one, one of the biggest favorites of the year who lost. And he lost to like he lost to high level opponents. He lost to a ranked level opponent. And I genuinely, listen, I got respect for the world for Reiner de Ritter. I do think he's really good in terms of what he's doing, in terms of business moves, going to UFC, making a run, fighting Robert Whittaker, taking hard fights. I respect the fuck out of him. I don't think he beats Robert Whittaker. I don't think he gets to high level currently as of making this video. So I'm putting Bo Nickel here because I don't think Reiner de Ritter is going to be a top 5 opponent. You know what I mean? So yeah, Bo Nickel's shit. And he was a world beater until this fight. I get it. There was a fan base that was already shitting on Bo Nickel before this happened. But I think the general populi didn't even see it, I think fucking every MMA predictor was picking Bo Nickel. Maybe Bedtime MMA was picking Reiner de Ritter. I think somebody else did, but I can't remember. But yeah. Anyways, that's been my video. The top aura losses, in my personal opinion, this year. Peyton Talbot at number 6. Jamal Hill at number 5. Israel Adesanya at number 4. Carlos Prates at number 3, earning the bronze medal via losing to a cuck. Henry Cejudo at number 2 because he literally quit. Showcase he doesn't have the fighting spirit even to fight against contenders for a number 1 contender fight. And Bo Nickel at number 1, earning the gold medal for being the biggest fraud and the most aura loss this year in Big 2025 so far. So if you made it all the way to the end of this video, I know it's been long. I appreciate you watching, making it all the way to this end of the video. I want to thank you for watching, and as always, I hope you have a good day.